actual alleged police shootings and police brutality following Hurricane Katrina, including the following, and she goes through that list. But in addition to that, she also talks about some highly visible incidents such as the Danziger Bridge, which we'll be hearing about, but also goes on to state the New Orleans Police Department has a history marred by incidents of racist police brutality. Experts report that the majority of those killed since Hurricane Katrina were killed by police. Given this pattern, Government Blanco's shoot-to-kill directive during Hurricane Katrina must be called into question. It created conditions under which complaints against police brutality could be dismissed more arbitrarily than before. And that's just a part of the record that was created by that committee, by the submission of Congresswoman McKinney. My second exhibit is a report by the Metropolitan Crime Commission, and this is called Crime and Safety in Central City, A Community's Perspective. What's interesting about this one is that the commission conducted a survey, and in all major categories, the attitudes of the citizens toward the police never went above 51% satisfaction. And it's relatively rare where jurisdictions actually go to the extent of making those kinds of inquiries of the citizens. More often than not, those inquiries will talk about their attitudes towards crime, but not usually their attitudes towards police. My third exhibit is entitled An Injustice for All, Workers' Lives in the Reconstruction of New Orleans. This was a joint project of the Advancement Project, the National Immigration Law Center, and the New Orleans Worker Justice Coalition in conjunction with the Advancement Project. I will call your attention to Section 5 on page 41. It says, workers across race and industry report numerous incidences of law enforcement abuse and violence at the hands of police and DHS and ICE agents, quickly becoming one of the top issues affecting workers in New Orleans. And this is in the aftermath of Katrina. Exhibit 4 is a report by the American Civil Liberties Union entitled Broken Promises 2 years after Katrina. And I'll call your attention on page 31 to the story of James Terry, who was an Army veteran who had serious problems with the police. And I apologize for being brief, but I just want to briefly describe them and then give you an opportunity to look into them yourselves. Exhibit 5 is a collection of news reports covering various incidences, such as this one from the Associated Press. In the days after the deadly storm, residents who could not escape the city and took shelter inside the convention center, along with others who were forced to leave their hotels, were told to evacuate by the bridge. But after a 2.5-mile walk in sweltering heat across the bridge, they were turned back by armed police from Gretna, who fired over their heads. And there are other stories in here and examples, including a timeline that shows a list of some of the other police activities that occurred during the hurricane and in the aftermath. And at this point, I would like to call my first witness. My first witness is Dr. Ronald Madison. That's Ronald Madison. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Good. Are any of your other family members present?
They haven't made it back yet, but they were here earlier.
Okay.
My two sisters.
Would you name them? Tell the judges who they were.
Okay, my sisters. One, Jacqueline Madison Brown. She's a nurse here in the city, and my sister Lorna Madison Humphrey, and she's an engineer here in the city.
And what is your occupation?
Okay, myself, I'm a dentist here in the city. I have a private practice. I have an office on both sides of the Mississippi River, one in Gretna and one in New Orleans.
And how long have you been a dentist?
23 years.
And where did you get your education?
I received a Bachelor's of Science degree in pharmacy from Xavier and my Doctor of Dental Surgery at Meharry Medical College, School of Dentistry.
Do you have any, have you named all your siblings?
No, I have two brothers now, Lance Madison and Raymond Madison. My brother Ronald Madison was killed in the aftermath of Katrina. This is Lance Madison. He was falsely arrested and accused of attempted murder of the police during the incident where my brother was murdered. Ronald Madison was murdered.
Okay. Will you tell us about your brother Ronald? Tell us something about him, what he was like.
Okay. Ronald was a 40-year-old young man, but he was mentally handicapped. He had the capacity of about maybe an 8-year-old, but he was genuinely gentle, a little introverted. He was a homebody. He rarely wanted to leave the house, and during the time of the hurricane, he refused to leave the house, so Lance stayed behind to take care of him.
And during the course of the hurricane, where did they stay?
Okay, originally they were at our mother's house, which is off of Chef Highway in an area called LaFawn Academy Park. My brother Lance had a home off of Dalman. He had a condo there. So originally they were in my mother's house. When the storm hit, it flooded. They moved to his house, which was 2-story, and he was able to at least avoid the water on the second floor. They eventually was brought to safety to Chef Mature Highway. Chef Highway, there's the Danziger Bridge there. There's a east side, which is by Dalman Road, and on the west side, just after you get off the bridge about half a mile, is my office, which is where they took refuge because my office didn't flood during the storm. And he had keys to my office, so they were able to stay there. Now, during the time after the storm, they would go back on the east bank side of the bridge because that's where they were picking up people to bring them to safety.
Will you tell us the events of September 4th,
Okay. On September
2005?
On September 4th, 2005, my two brothers were on the Danziger Bridge. They hadn't gotten they weren't at the bottom of the bridge at that time. When there was another African-American family at the foot of the bridge, a father, mother, daughter, and 4 teenagers. During the time when they were not quite halfway down the bridge, a rental truck pulled up, and 7 individuals got out of the rental truck, not disclosing that they were police. They were dressed in shorts and T-shirts and shirts. But they got out of the truck with assault weapons, and they shot down the family at the foot of the bridge. I mean, they shot down the father, they shot the mother's arm off, they shot the daughter in the back 3 times when she was trying to cover her mother to keep them from shooting her again. They shot 3 of the teenagers. 1 got away. 1 was killed. The teenagers' age ranged from 14 to 19. The one that was killed, his name was James Brissett.
Now, you weren't there. Is that
No,
correct?
I wasn't there.
But did you have the occasion to observe in another way, in a technological way, what happened on the bridge?
Yes, the news, Channel 6 News televised a lot of this, okay, the incident on the Danziger Bridge, plus the Times-Picayune publicized it. And then doing the news broadcast, you could see the people that were police got out of the van and started shooting. And they were just, I mean, there wasn't any fire against them. They weren't taking any defensive position, but they were just shooting on the ground. And you could, from the description of what happened by the news paper, by the Times-Picayune, they shot the family, okay? And then after they saw my brothers on the top of the bridge, and unfortunately they were a witness to this, they started shooting at them. Now, they shot my brother Ronald in the back twice as they were trying to get away, because when they saw him shooting at the family, they tried to run back to the office. After they shot my brother Ronald, Lance was able to bring him back over the other side of the bridge and lay him down on the ground by the hotel next door to my office. And then he tried to run and get help. He did run into the National Guard and the state police, and he tried to tell them what was happening. When the other people that were shooting everybody disclosed that they were police, and they arrested him and accused him of trying to shoot them. Now, the day of the incident, there were no guns found in the area, not on the family that they shot, and not on either one of my brothers.
What was?
Sorry to interrupt you now, but he hasn't been sworn?
Okay, who does the swearing?
You do.
I do, okay. Now that's a treat. Okay. Do you, my witness, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
When we left the story, he had been brought over to the bridge, and where did your brother place him before he went to get help?
He placed him on the grass in front of the hotel, and then he ran to try to get help. When he did find the state troopers and the National Guard, he was relieved, and he was telling them that people were shooting at them, and that's when the people that were doing the shooting identified themselves as being police officers and said that he was under arrest because he was shooting at them. As I was saying, there were no guns to be found in the area. It was publicized in the newspaper that there were no weapons from anybody else but the police at that time in that area. So you can even see in the news footage that no one was shooting at the police because they weren't taking any defensive action. They were just running up the bridge shooting. Now, when my brother did get back, my other brother, Ronald, was found dead then. He had been shot in the back 5 more times. So their intention was to kill him because I guess they figured he was a witness. I shouldn't be supposed.
Here, let me ask you this.
Okay.
I would like this to be marked Exhibit 3.
Okay.
We're up to Exhibit 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right, so that's Exhibit.
Okay. But in the newspaper pictures that are
Here, before you talk about that, we take a look at that and tell me, do you recognize that? Do you recognize that picture?
Yes, this is my brother Ronald on the ground. It shows here that he's bleeding on the ground, and at that point he wasn't dead. On CNN, there was a footage shot at CNN with a witness that testified that they stood him up in front of his pickup truck, and they lined up behind him like a firing squad and shot him in the back. Now, 5 bullets entered the back and 5 exited the front, and you saw the bullet holes on the pickup truck from where he was executed. My brother Lance tried to tell the police that his brother was injured, he needed medical attention, and they swore at him, cursed him, and threatened his life, if he didn't shut up.
Now, I want to also like to have marked into, well, you said that when your brother came back, what was it that happened to him when he returned? Could you give us some detail about
Okay, when he returned, he was placed under arrest, and he was charged with attempted murder of the police. As I said, and he was held He was held until released for bail for almost a month. As a matter of fact, I had to put up $400,000 to get him out of jail, which is more than all 7 of the police were charged for bail when they were released on first-degree murder charges.
Now, I'm going to approach you with another exhibit. This one is marked 8.
Okay, now this
Can you
is...
describe that?
The coroner did an autopsy, Dr. Frank Mignard, and I don't know how many of you are from New Orleans, but he's always represented the police in any brutality action or murder or accidental death of anybody that had been incarcerated. So our family weren't very trusting in his opinion, so we had an independent autopsy done by Dr. Michael Batten. He's the doctor that does the HBO show of autopsies. I don't know if anyone has ever seen it. But if you were to see this, if you saw the sketch that he drew of my brother's body, it showed the bullet wounds. And if you looked at the picture where he was shot at the first time, you could see that these bullet holes weren't in his back at that time. He was shot a second time, and that's where they killed him.
I would like you to hold this photograph up, and will you describe what it is that you're saying about the photograph? What condition is your brother now at this point? Is he still alive or not?
Yes, he's still alive in this photograph. You can see where he's trying to help push himself off the ground. One leg is bent, his elbow is bent, trying to lift himself up, and you can see the police person there trying to help him up also.
Now, according to Dr. Baden's report, it shows 5 bullet holes in the middle of the back. Will you look at this photograph and identify whether those bullet holes are present?
At this point, he hadn't been shot the second time because you can see his T-shirt is still white in the back. And if you look at the drawing that the autopsy report shows, the pathologist's report, he would have hit back, would have been covered in blood on his T-shirt if those shots were done at this time.
And so what has been your understanding as to how that if he is here evidently in police custody and does not have 5 additional bullet holes in his back, how those additional bullet holes, which were identified by Dr. Baden in the autopsy, came to be there?
Okay, his assessment of at the autopsy was that he was shot with a high-powered weapon 5 times. The first 2 shots lodged in his shoulder. The last 5 shots, he was shot with a high-powered weapon that was with enough force that it would all the bullets entered the back and exited the front of his body.
And what does that mean in terms of proximity?
Okay, now these bullets weren't just clustered together because the newspaper and reporter with the police account is that he was shot once in the back with a shotgun. The bullet wounds are wide-span enough that it was decided that there were individual shots. The trajectory of the bullets show that the shots came in different directions, from his shoulder through his lungs, from his side throughout his stomach, through his back, through his neck.
And based on this photograph, which shows him in custody without those bullet holes, would those shots have occurred while he was in custody or before?
The shots occurred after he was in custody because they had him. You could see in this picture that they had him under control and he wasn't resisting. He was probably too weak because the ground is covered with blood from the blood loss. He wasn't in a position to resist or cause any combative behavior.
Will you describe from what you see in the corner in red in the picture?
Okay, in this corner is a pickup truck where the guy testified on CNN that he was stood up in front of his pickup truck and shot a second time. They lined up behind him like a firing squad and they shot him a second time. They shot him again at that time. and that's when he collapsed to the ground and died.
Now, you're saying a guy on CNN. Are you
So
saying...
one of the witnesses that was staying at the hotel, that was his pickup truck at the hotel.
And did you actually see that? Did you see that report yourself?
Yes, it was televised on TV, on CNN. I don't know if any of you saw some of the aftermath footage that CNN presented, but that was part of it.
And when did you learn of your brother's death?
I found out on September 4th, when we had been inquiring really since the end of August after the storm about their whereabouts, because we weren't able to reach them or contact them. We contacted the Red Cross and tried to check all of the shelters. Eventually, one of the police officers at the police station that knew my family, I'm not sure if she was a patient of mine, but she contacted one of my sisters and told her that my brother Lance had been arrested. So at that point, we contacted an attorney in Baton Rouge to have him released, and through that investigation with the sheriff's department and other members of law enforcement, we found out that Lance had been arrested and my brother Ronald had been killed.
And then what happened next?
Okay, the criminal attorney finally was able to go over there and see him since no one could visit him to find out how he was doing, and then he arranged for bail for him. They finally had the hearing so that he could get bail for the charges that he was charged with, never that he was arrested for, because at the end when he was released and the charges were dropped, they said he was never charged. He was just being held and arrested for attempted murder.
And will you describe your attempts to secure your brother's remains?
Okay, it took 2 months for us to secure his body. We tried to go to, it was called D-Mort in Gonzales, Prairieville in Gonzales, where they held all the bodies. They tried to prevent us from seeing the body to identify it. They said they weren't sure yet, so we gave them a DNA sample. We finally got a court order to go see the body, and they still tried to hide the fact that they didn't want us to see the body, which is when we finally got another pathologist to go in saying that he was going to do an autopsy of the body because we wanted to know the cause of death. We went there with a court order, and I talked with Frank Mignard, and he said that the bodies had been moved because of Hurricane Rita at this time. And I said, what you were worried about, the dead bodies drowning? It didn't make any sense to me because they refused to let me identify his body and see what happened to him. So he's still in defiance of that court order. We just haven't pursued that issue.
But you were ultimately through. When you said another pathologist, you were referring to Dr. Baden, who
yes.
was then able to get your brother's body.
Yeah, he was able to see the body and do a second autopsy, and they still hadn't released the autopsy report because I wanted to find out if he was going to say something different than what Dr. Baden had come up with. But they both said that the cause of death was homicide.
And then tell me something about the process that you went through at that point in time, if any, as far as trying to get answers or get justice.
It was evident that he was shot by the police. The police report had the names of all the police involved. So even though they tried to hide the fact that we didn't know, we didn't know for sure that they had been they were involved. So the name is on the police report. But what was really, really damaging to them is that the police report had been altered twice. It was in 3 different handwritings, and they tried to add more material onto it. Whoever the last 2 individuals were added more material onto it to show just cause for even stopping him, because the first police report didn't show just cause to even stop him.
And since that time, are there any other issues that you've had either with the police or with the court system as far as your attempts to get justice?
Okay, besides the police covering up everything to try to protect themselves, we're now in a fight with the judicial system. I don't know if you've heard in the news, there was a motion finally to recuse the judge on this case because of the obvious preferential treatment that he's been offering to the police. First of all, no one has ever been released on bail for first-degree murder. You let there are people in jail longer than the 6 months that this is going on for misdemeanors that just haven't even come up for a hearing. But anyway, they were released on bail for first-degree murder. 3 of them were released on bail for attempted first-degree murder and second-degree murder. These were indictments handed down by the grand jury. One officer quit the force, and he was allowed to move to Houston. Now, no one is allowed to leave the state if they're on bail for a capital crime. But yet they allowed them to do that. The next incidence of insult was that they allowed the police to go back to work. And even though we contested that through the chief of police and the mayor, they still allowed them to go back to work. The third problem that we had with the judicial system is that they allowed some of the defense attorneys to see the grand jury's testimony, and that's never been done. So that they can try to find holes in the testimony to get them off to get the charges dropped. Normally, they just have to find ways of defending them on their own rather than just try to see what's been said about them to defend their clients. What really hurt our families and really made us disgusted with the legal system is that after they were indicted on December 28th, they were allowed to turn themselves in on January 2nd so they could spend New Year's with their family before even turning themselves in. And when anybody has been arrested by the police, they're automatically on the news handcuffed, walking them to the jail, showing that they've been accused of whatever, not convicted of whatever, but they always have, they call this march of shame that they put on the TV so that you can see that they've arrested an individual for a crime. Now, 3 days later, they were let out of jail. And as I was saying, it took almost a month for the hearing to come up to get my brother released for attempted murder charges, let alone being charged with first-degree murder. So the judicial system has been a big disappointment. And as I said in the news, I said if the public cannot trust the law enforcement and the judicial system, that all is lost for New Orleans.
Thank you for your testimony. I don't know if the judges have any questions.
Yes. Thank you for your testimony, and our hearts go out to your family.
Thank you.
Do you have or I don't know if the prosecutor has already put into evidence the newspaper articles that talk about this shooting on the bridge?
Presently, the DA, this trial has been prolonged. The trial hasn't started yet. They're still in the hearing where they're trying to get charges dropped against the police. Okay. Originally in the newspaper, they said 3 of them were promised immunity, but the grand jury still charged them. They just didn't say that the grand jury charged them because they were lying on each other.
I was referring to in your earlier testimony, you mentioned that your brothers went out on a bridge and saw the police shoot this family, and that was reported in the news. Do we have that in the record?
That hadn't been brought up in the trial.
I believe that one's probably, she's probably asking, when she's saying on the record, she's asking if we even put it in here. I think the article that you have is that the 7 officers were indicted. There were a whole series of articles, including some earlier articles where the police originally claimed that they were being shot at, and that's why they fired on these people. So I can get all of those other articles if you have interested in the rest of the series.
Yes.
Just to be painfully honest with you, none of the family were arrested. They just shot them and left them there.
Right.
The ambulance came when they thought they were coming to pick up policemen that had been shot, and there were no policemen that had been shot. They took the family to the hospital, and they were later released, and they're gone now. I guess they're afraid to come back, but the police never arrested them, and the judge at the hearing asked the policeman, why didn't they arrest these people that they shot? Otherwise, you just shot them for nothing.
I have one other question. You mentioned that your family had an autopsy done of your brother?
Yes.
Do you have that autopsy report?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and has that been put in the record?
On the advice of their counsel, the rest of that is being withheld. They have filed a civil suit, and they're awaiting the outcome of the criminal trial of the 7 police officers before making that available. That's why the sketch is all that we were able to obtain at this time. But I will take that as a standing request for once that becomes available, if this tribunal is still active.
And was the sketch done by the doctor that did the autopsy?
Yes.
That was his name on the sketch?
That's his signature on the bottom of the document.
The coroner's report has been released, though, so you can see from their description of how he was killed, and that they said that the cause of death was homicide. It describes the wounds being the wounds entering the back and exiting the front of his body also.
Okay. And you have a copy of that?
I do have a copy.
Could you make that available to counsel?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Audrey, you finish your question? I'm sorry, is anybody else? Go ahead. I'll
Please, translation
Sí.
to English, please. La posibilidad de una conexión con las familias o descendientes de los familiares que su hermano vio que asesinaron.
A possibility with a connection of the families that your brother saw assassinated.
Para ver si puede haber una denuncia de la otra parte y
Sí,
hacer más fuerza contra la pena de muerte, porque fue una pena de muerte.
See if they cannot be called upon to join in this suit, because what occurred in their case was a death sentence.
They filed a civil suit also. We don't have any connections with them, but they filed a civil suit for the death of their family member and their shooting. They're being wounded. Is that what he was asking?
Sí.
I was very interested in the fact that you said he might have been shot and eliminated because he was a witness to the massacre of the family. So we now come to the reason why the family might have been massacred. And can we have a chain of events whereby the family was massacred because they were witnesses to something?
They were shot first.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm wondering to what extent we're talking about a quantitative phenomenon here, and how many shootings of this type happened, and what was witnessed.
Well, if you look at the news, every day someone was turning up dead that had been shot by a police, or the police has shot someone else, or they brutalized someone. Matter of fact, 2 police were recently fired for second-degree battery on someone in the French Quarters, an attorney. So I guess that's why they took more decisive action before he launched his I guess attack on them. My discontent with that is that they would fire 2 people for second-degree battery, but they wouldn't fire, these 7 people that were charged with first-degree murder. And that's really what's hurting to not only our family but to the public, that they're open to this type of action also. The pattern of violence with the police force has been in existence for a long time. And I guess after finally reaching home with our family, it's more and more realistic that, of what's going on, even though I never agreed with it before. But I think in our battle to make sure that these people are prosecuted for their crimes, it would help protect the rest of the population and the public. Because this happens from the West Coast to the East Coast, from California to New York, and you see all of the killings that have taken place or read about.
You're a resident, long-term resident of New Orleans, Doctor?
Yes, I've lived in New Orleans since I was 5.
So, in your experience, is this the uniform worn by the New Orleans police that's apparent in the picture here?
Wait a minute, I don't quite understand your question.
If people in this room, including the panelists in this tribunal, were to leave the building now and go outside, could we expect to see police officers, recognize police officers by virtue of the uniform worn in this photograph?
In this photograph, some of them are in uniform. A lot said that the uniforms were dirty, they didn't have anything else to wear, so that's why they were in civilian clothes. So at the time that the shooting took place, no one realized they were police officers.
Yes, that's my point. Is there something about the photograph, the uniform displayed in the photograph, that would cause you to distinguish it from a member of the United States Army, for example?
And that's their SWAT outfit. They showed some more of them, either state trooper or a SWAT uniform.
Do you see anything that distinguishes SWAT or state police uniform, if that's what it is, from the Army?
The picture where my brother Lance is in, it shows them in that uniform, and they have state police written across the front.
Yeah, on the vest, but not
Yes.
on the uniforms. And there's no vest here, is there?
He may have a vest, I can't tell.
Okay, so you could easily
I just figured he was law
confuse the
enforcement.
two. You indicated that there was a preliminary result that your brother had been killed by a close-range shotgun blast, but that was
That was put out in the news as smoke by the defense attorneys. They stated that in the news. Oh, he was only shot once in the back by a shotgun. I said he shouldn't have been shot in the back at all by anything. There's no threat when someone is shot in the back. That's forbidden against the law, the rules of engagement, to shoot any individual in the back, which means he's running away from you and he's not posing a threat to you. So the police has no right to shoot you in the back.
Well, pending receipt of the autopsy report, I don't know what's in it. Are you aware if there's been a determination made as to what sort of ammunition was used to kill your brother?
Whatever ammunition you have in an AK-40 rifle.
Oh, that's a CAR-15. It's
Okay.
apparent, which is military issue weaponry. It's not police issue.
It's not. They
So-
say they ran out of bullets for their regular police issue weapons, and they brought out their toys. This was advertised in the newspaper that they came out with their toys to enforce the law.
One further related question. Are you aware, just as a resident who's involved in something like this, of the weaponry and uniforms that were used by personnel from Blackwater International who were deployed in New Orleans?
No.
So on the visual evidence, that could be military, police, or contract mercenary personnel.
Well, the people and they never denied shooting my brother. The police didn't.
Right.
And their names are on the police report, so that's why these people were indicted for the shooting. And as I said, evidently they didn't have their stories together because each one told on the other.
So the story could be false entirely
What, that they shot him?
as to who shot him.
As to who shot him? Well, that's obstruction of the law.
Yes. But just on the face of it, to your knowledge.
Well, several of them stated the same person did it, and that's
Okay.
the guy that's in Houston.
Okay. These are just for purposes of clarity or the opposite, because it's anything but clear.
Okay.
Thank
good,
you.
Good, I appreciate that.
To your knowledge, was anyone ever charged with the murder and the shootings of the family members?
Of the other family?
Yes.
Yes.
The police?
Yes.
So they're indicted for those
For that
shootings?
too, yeah, they're indicted for some of the shootings, and the indictments are for the other family.
So is it some of the same 7 who are indicted for shooting and killing your brother?
Yes.
Thank you.
Eu queria saber se o caso da sua família e se acaso você conheça outras famílias também que passaram o mesmo processo.
I want to know, in the case of your family or other families who've gone through similar processes,
Se estão sofrendo ameaças, opressões por parte da polícia, mesmo que indireta.
are you facing threats, direct or indirect, from the police for speaking out against this injustice?
Well, I guess that never bothered me because, I mean, if I have to be afraid now for speaking out, I have to be afraid for not saying anything. But if you would look up on the internet Signal 26, you'll see a lot of what the police has to say. They've threatened the DA prosecutor. It's really barbaric, the statements that the people that are here to protect us are, and what they're saying. So if you look up Signal 26, www Signal 26, you'll see what the police are saying. The threats.
Vous avez dit que l'un des 7 policiers qui a assassiné la famille
You said that one of the 7 police that assassinated the family
faisait partie de l'équipe qui a assassiné votre frère.
was part of the team that assassinated your brother.
Comment est-ce possible que le policier ait été reconnu comme criminel et il se retrouve effectivement portant l'uniforme et défendant les citoyens? Je ne comprends pas.
I don't understand how this was a police in uniform who's supposed to have been protecting the citizens.
I don't either, because afterwards, from the witnesses that talked to my family, they were bragging about which shot was a good kill shot. And I really, with this picture being shown in the newspaper, how they stood by and let them shoot him again. And that point has never come up in court yet either.
If there are no further questions, we'll... Oh. Okay. Sorry, Judge.
Concernant le maire de la Nouvelle-Orléans,
In relation to the mayor
est-ce
of
qu'on
New
peut,
Orleans,
quel niveau de responsabilité peut-on lui attribuer?
was he approached, and what level of responsibility could be incumbent upon him?
We wrote the mayor and we voiced our opposition to allowing these people to go back to work as police officers, and he said he wasn't going to get involved in it. That's our good mayor. Yes.
Je voulais poser justement la question par rapport au maire,
To follow up in relation to the mayor?
parce que d'après ce que j'ai compris, quel était le statut des policiers? Est-ce que c'était des policiers municipaux ou bien des policiers qui le relevaient de l'État de Louisiane?
It was not clear to me, are these municipal police or state police?
In the picture, state police.
The ones that... she's probably asking about the ones that
Shot my brother.
yeah.
Okay, no, they were New Orleans police. 7 of them were New Orleans police. One that was involved that hasn't been arrested yet was somebody pretending to be a deputy from a deputy of the sheriff's department from St. Landry's Parish. And we've already questioned why hasn't he been charged yet also. Because there were 8 names in the indictment against my brother and his name was on there.
Would you clarify what you mean when you say pretending to be a deputy?
He had been dismissed from the St. Landry Sheriff's Department for police brutality, for falsifying arrest reports in order to get an arrest on individuals, and he was convicted also. So he wasn't at all had anything to do with the Sheriff's Department, and they disclaimed that he was a employee of their Sheriff's Department.
And did we hear you say that he is one of the ones that has been reported to have shot your brother and yet hasn't been charged?
He was on the report that stated that my brother had attempted to shoot them and falsified the fact that he saw my brother with a gun. At the time my brother was arrested, he requested 3 times, not 1 time, but 3 times, to be tested for gunpowder flash to prove that he never had a gun. My brother doesn't own a gun, although I'm sure a lot of people during that time needed one just to protect themselves from other individuals and the police. I don't know if you've ever saw this news footage where the father of a family was killed by the New Orleans police in front of the convention center. Well, the police, he tried to stop the police car to get help for his family. The police car hit him. He fell on the hood. The police they used their shotgun to shoot him off the hood, knock him off the hood with a shotgun blast, and then ran over his body with a car and kept going. That was on the news. It was on CNN and the New Orleans news, local news. So it's been happening a lot, the situations.
Okay.
Recently, there was one police that was released from charges that was the 62-year-old retired school teacher who was attacked in the French Quarter by 4 law enforcement agents where they were beating up a 62-year-old man because he was for public drunkenness. Now, if you're on Bourbon Street, I'm sure 90% of the people are walking around the street there in public drunkenness, but they decide to pick on this one old African American man, and the judicial system released the officer. One committed suicide over the incident. The other one, they released him saying that the old man was resisting arrest, while 4 young officers were beating him.
Okay, Judge.
Sí, en el cuadro de con el ciclón Katrina, es que hay otros casos parecidos a este.
In relation to Hurricane Katrina, are there other cases similar to this one?
Yes.
Y en el pasado reciente ha habido estos casos. Lo digo porque...
And have these cases occurred even to this day? I ask this because...
la política del gobierno de Bush está, digamos, produciendo una aceleración del racismo.
Because it would appear that the policies of the administration are only accelerating.
Porque creo que lo que está en este tribunal también es juzgar al gobierno federal, sobre todo al gobierno de Bush.
The question here is the responsibility also of the Bush administration.
The same president that said he was going to do all he could for New Orleans. I doubt that Bush could carry. Bush came down here for a public relations event. He didn't come down here to see about what he did or didn't do for New Orleans. When he said he was going to do all he could to help the people of New Orleans, I knew then he wasn't going to do anything.
And also to answer your question, it's our position that many times the federal government is not named as a defendant in these suits, but it's our position that the government has 2 levels of responsibility. The first is under its duty to uphold the law and protect the Constitution, and here crimes are being committed and constitutional rights are being violated, but also because of the contractual relationship, which is not always brought out between the federal government through the Department of Justice and other funding programs to police departments, that also create a contract where there is a requirement under the contract that anyone receiving the funds swear additionally to uphold the law. And that end of it does not seem to be being followed in cases where we have this kind of pattern and practice of abuse and racial profiling.
Now, we did file a complaint with the Department of Justice here in the city, and Jim Letton, that's one of the cases he didn't want to work on. I see him in the news quite a bit lately for minor things such as embezzlement or whatever, but he's not interested in working on police brutality and first-degree murder, especially when it involves the police.
Any other questions from the judges? All right. Thank you, Mr. Madison. You may step down. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
And what's that? Oh, it'll be less than that. Okay. I'd like to call as my next witness, William Tanner. That's called self-authentication.
Thank you.
What's the witness?
Please state your name for the record
My name is William A. Tanner.
and your birthplace.
I was born in Oakland, California.